Queensland artist Brook Chivell is known for his high energy live shows. He has released several country rock singles over the past few years, and the latest is Put 'Em Up. Hi, Brook.
G'day, how you going?
I'm very well, thank you, and looking forward to talking to you about the song and about some other things. In fact, I will go straight to the song. What is Put 'Em Up about?
That's a great question. It's just about, kind of living life with a bit of an attitude and just going at it, really. It's, what are you going to do if life starts to get you down? Put them up. That's what it's about.
Yeah, right. Do you think it's when you're a live performer, there's a bit of having to fake it till you make it sometimes? Like you don't necessarily feel like putting on a show, but you have to put them up.
Yeah, I guess that works in that. That's the reason I kind of chose the title in the first place, because there's so many different kind of scenarios that, there's put them up, like put up your dukes if you're fighting, or put your drinks up in the air, or put your hands up in the air. Like that was kind of why I came up with it. Country music, you like to have those, those little sayings that have, multiple meanings.
Yeah. So how long ago did you write this song?
The music was written right at the start of COVID. I just went through this really, really purple patch of writing. Honestly, I thought I didn't have any more songs in me. I thought that's it. It's just I've written all my songs and that's what it is. And because I play so many gigs, I just wasn't picking up the guitar for fun anymore.
Right.
And because COVID kind of killed all the gigs, and I also had a back injury, so I couldn't work. And I literally sat on the couch and just noodled on guitar.
Right.
And that was one of the songs that came out. I actually took a really long time to write the lyrics for it, though. And it wasn't until last year I got together with Nat Pearson and Tori Dark, and we wrote the lyrics together. So yeah. So
it was before COVID that you felt like that was it. You had no more songs.
Yeah. Aside from Fearless Rider, I'd probably written a song in 5 years.
Right.
And that's a really long time for me. I used to, I'd be writing, at least coming up with little parts. It's not even necessarily about, writing a completed song. It's just, that's a cool thing. I'll record that little, might be a guitar lick or a little, write an idea for a lyric on my notes or something like that. But I just didn't have anything coming out. It was so weird.
Do you think it's the peril of playing a lot that like you putting all your energy into performing, and because yes, you do have a high energy live show, that takes a lot, and there's not necessarily anything left for other creative pursuits?
I find that I kind of go through phases as far as music goes. It's like if I'm in a writing phase, I'm in a writing phase. I don't even think about perform. Like if I've got gigs that come up, then sure I go and do them, but I don't really think about the live performances, and I'm not really thinking about recording so much. It's just this is coming out, and then as soon as I start recording, I generally stop writing.
Okay.
It just turns off. It's like I don't even think about it. It's just gone. And I think, where did all that creativity that I had go? And then I realized, well, now I'm thinking about how does this song become a finished product? Like what do I want the drums to sound like? What do I want the guitar parts to be? Because I'm very hands-on with all that kind of stuff. I'm not a drummer, and I don't profess to try and tell Michael, my drummer, what to play, because he would probably shoot me if I did. But I'll tell him what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah.
And then usually the guitar parts are all me. Like I'll sit with, like I sat with Jared Adlam, and I never really done that before. I'd always recorded guitar parts and then taken them into to whoever was mixing, Okay. But this time around, I actually sat in the studio with him, and we kind of worked through solos on the spot, which I've never done before. I've always written my solos beforehand so that I knew what I was going to play and I could go in. It's more, time efficient and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of wanted to really go with a bit more of a older process, I guess. Back in the 70s, bands would go in with nothing written. Yeah. And like Deep Purple went in for the album that's got Smoke on the Water on it. They did not have one song written, and they came out with an album 10 days later.
Yeah. Yeah, look, different processes for different times, and maybe it was because of who you were working with. Maybe you thought, hey, I do want to see what Jared's got to say about this.
That's true. I mean, he's a great guitar player as well. So there'd be times he'd say, "Why don't you try this lick? Why don't you try this thing?" And I'd say, "Oh yeah, that'll work." Or sometimes I'd be like, I just would never play that, so I'm not going to play that now.
Yeah, right. So when you had your purple patch at the start of COVID, did you keep track of how many songs you wrote?
I mean, if you look in my notes on my phone, there's probably it literally from the start of COVID, there's probably 200 different. They're not finished songs by any stretch, but they're probably it's usually going to be some kind of riff, a verse guitar part, and a chorus guitar part, and if there's any other parts, I've usually got that down. But I've always, I'm not exclusively a write music first, but in general, I would say probably 80% of the songs I've written have been music first, and the other 20% have been like, I don't know, it feels like they come from somewhere else because I'm not a natural lyric writer. But there's been times when I've just literally, there's a song on my first album called "He's There," and I wrote it in 20 minutes.
Right.
It literally, and I'm not going to say where I wrote it, but it literally just, it was written in 20 minutes and it never changed.
Right. So do you have a sort of self-editing process when you have that collection of riffs and things like that, whereby it's the ones that you are sticking in your brain that you go back to and do something with? Or do you just have a process where you go through those notes and listen again and get rid of what's not going to function?
I never get rid of anything, but because you never know, you might think, oh, that verse is pretty lame and that chorus doesn't work, but that riff really is, it could be something. And because there's only so many keys that I write in, most of my songs are going to be in, well, a lot in E or D really, because they're just the keys that are guitar. Guitar is a very E orientated instrument, or G. And, if you've got a lot of that, then the riffs that you write will be in those keys, and they're pretty much transferable between songs a lot of times. So that's happened. It's funny because I'll have a finished song and then I'll listen back through my notes and go, oh, that thing's from there and that thing's from there. And I remember writing them thinking they weren't supposed to go together.
Yeah, right. It's interesting how the brain works like that, isn't it? Clearly you've recorded it on the hard drive somewhere as well as in the notes. Yeah. So because you have played festivals and big shows, when you take this song or take any song like this to the studio, do you start to think about how you're going to translate that to an audience? Like when you record it? No. Not
at all. I heard a friend, I was in a band with a guy named Aaron Downs back a long, long time ago. And he said to me, why would you ever record? Because I used to be that. I used to think bass, drums, 2 guitars, and whatever instrumentation's in the band, and that's what you do. And he said, why would you do that? You could record, it's not like Freddie Mercury went in and recorded Bohemian Rhapsody with just the guys in the band. Like there's so many overdubs and so much extra stuff on there. And then you work out how you're going to do a version of that.
Right.
And I really like that deal too. Like I don't use backing tracks when I perform, because I like to go out and do something that, people that know the song go, oh, that was a little bit different, because it's going to be whatever's on the stage at the time.
And so now you mentioned working with Jared Adlam. Why was he the right producer for this?
Because he's close. Jared's he is close. And I used the guy named Adrian Hannon for my first 2 albums. And actually his son Josh is in the top 6 of Australian Idol at the moment.
Oh, right. There you go.
As a side note. And I hear Adrian and Barb, I love those guys. But Melbourne, it's just too far to be going to Melbourne and back. And I'd heard a bunch of stuff that Jared had done. Just through, being the scene here. And it just happened that when COVID hit, all of his clients, like he had interstate clients, they couldn't get here. He had, obviously a whole bunch of people were scared out of their minds. So they were kind of cancelling left, right and center. And I thought, oh, well, I'm happy to go in. I don't care. So I had a couple of things that I wanted to do. I didn't even necessarily have anything finished at the time. But I thought, well, if I can go in, and he's he's an easygoing guy, really nice guy. He's so easy to get along with and so into the process as well. And he kind of works on, you know, I think he pretty quickly figures out what you like as a person and how you're going to be with it. You know, some people, he has people going to him that have lyrics and maybe a couple of chords that, you know, they don't really know how the song goes, and he'll basically write the song and record everything.
Right.
And I go in and say, but you just press record over there, big fella. I'm going to do most of the work here, because that's the kind of guy I am. And he works everywhere in between there as well. You know, he works with, you know, guys who do everything, and he works with people that, you know, don't really know what to do. And it's great, because it means that, you know, there's people in the scene who could never record something by themselves, but he facilitates that really well.
Yeah, I think you've just done a great wrap on why Jared would be a good producer for a range of people. So if anyone's watching in Southeast Queensland needs a producer.
No, don't go there. I struggle to get in with him as it is. He's so busy.
Look ahead. But let's start at the beginning for you, because you know what you just described, going into the studio and saying just press record, is because that comes from being an artist with a lot of experience and a lot of understanding of how music works, how songs work. So go right back to the beginning of you and music. What was the first instrument you picked up, and how old were you?
My dad had a it's called a chord organ, and basically an air pump blows through the thing, and it's kind of like a piano accordion but set flat. So it's got the black and white keys of piano accordion on one side, and on the other side, on your left hand side, it's got not as many, but it's got, you know, a bunch of the chords that are on a piano accordion as well. Ooh. So basically it's I'd turn it on and just pick things out initially, because I had no idea about music, and I was probably 5 when I started doing that. And then I was lucky enough to go to a high school that had a really good, a tech school back in the day, that had a really good music program, and we had 20 keyboards and headsets and all that kind of business. So I've always had a fairly decent ear. Like I'm no elite, you know, stand up on stage and have someone start playing and me play along. I'm not that guy. But I'd say to the teacher, could you just play through this song for me? And then I didn't really want to learn how to read music. So I'd learn it by ear.
Right.
And then she'd say, because we'd have to be tested on every song. So I'd play it and she'd say, oh, no, you made a mistake there. So I'd say, could you just play through it again for me? I never ever learned to read music because I just cheated.
Well, except, you know, it's different things that work for different people. I think there are plenty of musicians who never learned to read music. And I've said, because I learned to read music from quite a young age, I can't play by ear at all.
Right.
So give me a piece of music to sight read, fine. But yeah, it escapes me to do it any other way.
A lot of the, I think a lot of the Japanese, like back in the 80s, is it the Suzuki or Yamaha? One of those. So they kind of learn by ear first and then learn how to read. Because guitar players, you don't really need to know how to read, because there's so few circumstances under which you would actually need that. Like you need to be able to read a chart, but that's not music per se. That's just, you know, usually in the country scene, it's numbers, a number chart, which I'm like, why wouldn't you just write the chords? Just write the letters. I know what the letters are. I don't want to have to convert the number into a chord. My brain doesn't work that fast.
Well, also, yes, you're right. The chord system is perfectly fine. But you talked about the chord organ and like the piano accordion. Piano accordion looks to me like the most complex instrument of all time. I've had a look at one of those things up close. I don't know how anyone can work out how to play them. There's so much going on, both hands and all the chords to put together with the left hand.
Yeah.
Just an acknowledgement more than anything.
Yeah, big time. I mean, I never got any good at it. It was just that happened to be the instrument that we had at home that I could kind of, pushed me to want to do that. And I actually wrote my first song when I was about 7.
Right.
Like, it didn't have any music, and years, because I still remember it. And years later, I actually went back and worked out what music would be behind it. It was just basic 12-bar blues, but yeah, I didn't know that at the time.
Right. So when did you decide to start singing?
About 3 weeks ago, by the sounds of it. No, I got sick of. I could always sing, like, but kind of my dad's got a good voice. It kind of runs in the family, and we would go on holidays and we'd have sing-alongs in the car and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of worked that way. And I was usually one of the better singers in whatever school I was at, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kind of really focused on guitar. Like I started playing when I was 17. I basically locked myself in my room for 5 years and didn't really think about singing because my voice had broken, and I went from being a voice soprano to having this bass baritone thing. I had no idea how to get back to what I had. And so yeah, I just kind of let it go. I thought, oh well, I'm never going to be a singer. I can sing Hootie and the Blowfish songs, and that's about it, because it's nice and low. But yeah, I guess I played in bands, a whole bunch of bands in Melbourne, and I sang a couple of songs here and there just to give the singer a break, choice songs that suited my voice. And then it was really, I don't know, I was in a band and just had 3 different singers that were all unreliable, and eventually got to the point where I went, I'm just going to sing.
Right.
And plus, because and then when I was writing my own stuff, it was written for my voice, so
yeah,
I could do whatever I wanted then. And because country, you can get away with doing a low voice thing. As it turns out, I've probably got a much higher register than, like, I can still do the low stuff as well, but I can actually sing a lot higher now than I could, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I've been having lessons for the last 5 years, and it's just blown my mind, to be honest.
Yeah, right. But what you were saying about having been a voice soprano and then, your voice breaks, I often think that would be so strange and maybe a little bit heartbreaking for a boy who was a singer before his voice broke. And then, as you said, you don't know what to do with it. It's a completely different instrument after that.
It really was. I could sing all the girl songs. Like, I could sing, I'm just trying to think of the song. Like any of the female songs out of The Sound of Music. I could sing all those songs. Even the Climb Every Mountain thing, I could sing that in full voice, no problem. And then, then it was, after my voice break, it was just trying to pick up the pieces of what was left. And there was not much left. I mean, it's taken probably literally 15 years to get to, it took 15 years to get to a point where I felt comfortable singing on stage, really.
Right. But you just said over the past few years you've been having lessons, and I wonder whether that technique you learned as a voice soprano has been the reason why you could get some more of your range now.
No, that was because it was all natural.
Right.
When I was a kid, I never had any lessons. It was just there. I never even had to think about it. I could just sing high. It was just there.
Yeah. But now, anyway, look, you're expanding your range now, and that's to the benefit of the songs that you're recording now. So before you recorded Put 'Em Up, did you have a chance to road test it with audiences?
I played it twice.
Okay.
So I played it at Gympie last year.
Right.
And I'm not going to, Gympie was okay because I had another guitar player. And the riff in it is it's not a technical riff or anything, but it's very syncopated to the vocal. So, and because I'd recorded them separately, I hadn't even thought about that. Whereas normally I've played a song, 50 times on stage, so I'm okay with it. But then I did a charity gig with Adam Brand at the start of January, and it was just a 3-piece gig, me, a bass player and a drummer. And I realized, I'm going to have to be able to do this. So I just sat there basically doing the, pat my head and rub my stomach thing for a couple of weeks, and it came together.
Yeah, right. And because that point you make about, normally you'd have played a song quite a few times before you record it, so you'd have worked that out. Of course, lockdown would be the reason, pandemic generally would be the reason why there weren't a lot of gigs to play at, even though you're in Queensland and it was the relatively free state of Queensland. It wasn't like things were normal.
Well, there was a lot of cover gigs, but, they weren't really doing much original stuff. So I was still gigging a lot, but just not doing my own stuff.
Right. So when you went into the studio with Jared to record Put 'Em Up, did you record other things at the same time, or was it just focused on that song? Okay.
So I didn't realize it at the time, but I went in and recorded some stuff because I'd been sitting in front of the TV watching a whole bunch of VH1 specials, like just on YouTube. And it was all 70s stuff, like, you know, Chicago and Grand Funk Railroad and all these I'd just fall down the rabbit hole. And then I'd sit there playing along with, you know, not necessarily what they were playing, but just I'd get a vibe and think, oh, this would be cool if I could do something that was like that, you know. So I actually wrote and it won't be released as me, but I've kind of recorded a 70s rock album as well.
Right. So when you say you won't release it as you, are you going to use a completely different name?
Yeah.
Right. So like a separate project, separate gigs, everything.
Yeah. So it's a band name. It's been recorded under a band name.
Okay. So does that?
And there are a couple of songs there that are probably fairly crossover there because 70s rock is very country based anyway. Like the Eagles are basically a country band.
Mm-hmm.
Fleetwood Mac basically played country music. The Rolling Stones are doing country in the 70s as well. So there's a lot of crossover there.
Yeah, interesting. It's very mysterious. It sounds almost like a secret project. So which artists do you think have influenced you most as a country performer?
Initially, it was Keith Urban because as a kid, I mean, my dad listened to a lot of country, but to me, it was Dad's music. You know, he listened to, you know, Charlie Pride and Johnny Cash and that kind of stuff, and I didn't resonate with me. Right. But then I saw Keith Urban on. This is going to date me very badly right now, but I saw him on the Vizard show, right. And he played a song called Clutterbilly, and it's basically just him shredding. Like back then, he still plays a lot of guitar, but his guitar playing was right at the forefront. And I thought, wow, this guy can actually really play. And I went out and bought his first Australian album, which is pre the American album. I think it was 1993 or 92 or something like that. It's called anyway. And I've always loved Keith Urban ever since then. There was times where I didn't start listening to other country music until kind of Faith Hill. Right. But I always listened to Keith all the way through.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot worse performers to love than Keith Urban because, yes, he is amazing live in particular. Yeah. So what's ahead for you this year? As I said, you great on the big live shows. There are some festivals in your home state coming up. Are you playing any?
None of them are actually announced yet. So
I don't know who you are. We never had this conversation.
And so when they don't announce yet, I also don't know.
Okay. Or maybe you do know and you can't say. I think that's often the case.
But yeah, I've got a fairly hefty release schedule for this year because I haven't really given it a push for a while. It's been, you know, a few years since I released multiple songs in a year. So I really I've got 4 songs that are ready to go as singles, and the next one will be released in May. So I want to try and get 4 or 5. There'll probably be a couple of soft releases. I won't go through the whole release schedule of doing all the radio and all that kind of stuff. It'll just be more, you know, trying to service my fan base kind of deal. So probably a couple of cover songs as well, because just songs that I really love. And my first album had a cover of Flame Trees on it. So I'm not against the idea. I just never released it as a single. I had a lot of pressure from people in radio saying, you got to release that song, I'm like, I don't want to be that guy that makes it on a cover and then I'm the cover singer. I don't want to be that guy.
That's fair enough. Do you get nervous or excited before you release new music?
Just feels like I'm standing at the edge of a big hole throwing money in it.
That's a different kind of emotion again.
Hopeful. I'm always very hopeful, because you never know what songs are going to resonate with people. And this whole thing is about connection. Nothing else. It could be my favorite song. I think Put 'Em Up is one of the best songs that I've ever done. But that doesn't necessarily resonate with other people. I'm not one of those people that writes for the fans. There, a lot of those people. I'm not that guy. I write for me. And if people happen to like it as well, then that is a massive bonus. And we're all searching for that connection. But I don't try and second guess the audience, because, I think art is about an expression of yourself, not about what you think other people like. Van Gogh's wasn't out there painting pictures that he thought other people wanted to see. He was painting from the heart, and I write from the heart too. So, I mean, I might also die destitute, and hopefully people discover my music later as well.
Hopefully with both your ears intact.
I'm not going to cut my ear off. That'd be horrible.
Yeah, but Put 'Em Up is a very likable song, and it is out now, and you have some other songs coming, which is great news. So Brook Chivell, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.